Call the meeting to order. All rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call. All members are present. Approval of the agenda. Is there any changes to the agenda?
No.
Council?
Nope.
Do I have a motion to approve the agenda with the, as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Joe, second by Diane. Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5 in favor, none against. Approval of the minutes of the January 18th, 2023 meeting. I'll receive them in your packet. Is there any changes, corrections, or clarification needed for those minutes? Hearing nothing, do I have a motion to approve the minutes of the January 18th meeting?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Motion by Shellen, second by Heidi. Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5 in favor, none against. This now brings us to our public open forum. Is there anyone here that would like to talk to the council? Is there anyone that would like to speak to the council? State your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Hi, I'm Chris Olmshank, 831 Lake Ridge Drive. I'm sorry, we made a mistake. We did not get a permit for lakeshore work. The opportunity came up that the lakeshore work was being done next door, and we could be next to get ours done. I can make a million excuses as to why we didn't know about the permit, but none of it matters. I did learn through this whole situation that it isn't all that uncommon to not get a permit after all, as others on our road didn't get a permit either. We have asked to revise the original restoration order to allow the riprap sand and established grass to remain because in removing it, it would destroy the now established slope and hillside. And the main goal is to prevent further erosion and runoff. We will also make it better with native plantings and trees. We have been working with the city engineer and the city to modify this original restoration order that was first given. They have reviewed our request and have agreed that it is acceptable as noted. We are looking for approval tonight so that we can resolve the situation and go forward from here. We can't turn back time, and if we could, we would. But here we are. So I guess we are just asking to have our revised restoration order approved tonight and also ask to negotiate the fine as well in all fairness. So hopefully we can all move forward and move on and learn from everything in a positive way. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak to the council? No one else? Our public open forum is now closed. We'll move on to reports and presentations. Center Care update.
Hi, I'm Ann Major, the nursing home administrator for Center Care. And I'm Patty Rao. I'm the senior director for acute. We're here tonight to share some exciting news related to long-term care services in the Sauk Center community as well as throughout Centricare. We have determined it is in the best interest of our residents to seek a request for proposal or to find someone to purchase the senior services portion of our campus. Throughout our history, Centricare has been innovative and continues to seek the highest quality care for all of our lines of service. We've determined that the changes in long-term care over the last 10 years and the anticipated changes to come are very different than our acute care and our ambulatory rules and regulations. The state of Minnesota also has many, many exceptional long-term care organizations. It's all they do, and they do it well. So at this time, we have submitted a request for proposal out to a handful of organizations. We're hoping to hear back within a month, and then we'll do some due diligence. We'll be able to bring information back to the city and report back our findings. This process will not happen overnight. It is a 6 to 12-month process, so we have a lot of time to ensure that we're doing what's best. At the end of the day, we want to ensure that there are long-term care services for our seniors in Sauk Center today and for years to come. I've been asked, why did we start a building project if this is what was going to happen? I think it's important for anyone who hasn't been in the old building to understand that while we provide exceptional care here in Sauk Center, we have the best possible staff. Our building was really lacking in space and amenities for residents compared to our peers and the norms that have been set. Our new campus will continue to build. We will finish out the project. We're very excited. We will be having an open house for our employees on Tuesday next week, an open house for the public on Sunday the 12th before the Super Bowl game. And our residents are planning to move on February 21st. We will be going from a 60-bed facility with 6 private rooms. The rest are shared with shared bathrooms, sometimes 4 to a bathroom, to a 60-bed facility with 6 semi-private rooms, and those 6 each would share with one other person their bathroom. 33 of our rooms are almost completed, and that's where we'll move now, and then we will demolish the inside of our current building and finish that build over the next 6 to 8 months.
Mm.
Do you have any questions for us? We wanted to make sure that the city council was aware, and if you had any questions, that we would be available for you.
Council have any questions on what they are wanting to do? The only thing I had, and I talked to Vicki about it already, is whether or not our lease with Centricare was if you could sublease or not, and it sounds like there's a few legal things that need to be worked out, so.
And I know our legal team is working.
Okay, sounds good. Anyone else have? Okay,
All right, thank you.
thank you. Ambulance year-end report. Kathy?
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. I'm here to present the fourth quarter report for 2022 and the 2022 year overview. So, fourth quarter from the ambulance call volume was down from what we're compared to the rest of the year and previous years. In October, we had 67 runs and activities. 16 were no loads, 1 ALS transfer, 7 BLS transfers, 51 billable calls, where we billed out approximately just over $59,000. So 67 runs in October compares to 83 last year, or in 2021, and 44 from 10 years ago in October. November, we had 60 total runs and activities, 17 no loads, 3 ALS transfers, 15 BLS transfers, 43 billable calls, billed out over 47,000. So the 60 November runs this year compares to 77 from a year ago and 43 from 10 years ago. So, and December, 56 runs, and 19 of those were no loads, 4 ALS transfers and 9 BLS transfers. 37 of those calls were billed for approximately almost 47,000 that was billed out. And 56 in December compares to 86 from 1 year ago and 56 from 10 years ago. So you can see our numbers this quarter were down. Fourth quarter special details, we did 3 football game standbys at the high school. Mutual aid, we did 1 mutual aid for Mayo ambulance out of St. Cloud. That was, we had a crew coming back from a transfer to St. Cloud and came upon a medical in a vehicle on the interstate. So they stopped and rendered aid to that patient until Mayo ambulance got there. And then I think on the report, I put 0 for hospital assists, but we actually did have 2 where we assisted the hospital. For our no loads, you can see the majority are still crashes, followed by falls and lift assists. And some of the other higher no loads are breathing problems, intoxication and drugs, and medical alarms. For the year-end overview, in 2022, we were awarded the Team of the Year Emergency Medical Service for the Central Region by the Greater St. Cloud Public Safety Foundation. So we got a plaque for that. So we were honored. It's the first time they've issued this award, and we were a recipient. 2022 percentages, the run statistics. No loads accounted for 28% of our calls. ALS transfers were 5.6% and BLS transfers 21.2%. And so regular medical calls are 45.2% of our runs. Comparison over the last 4 years, I've got the ALS transfers, BLS transfers, no loads and medicals on a graph from 2019, 20, 21, and 22. So transfers were down from 2021, both for BLS and ALS. And you can just see the graph there, how everything compares over the last 4 years. Runs by county. Stearns County, 89.35% of our runs are in Stearns County, which makes sense. It's the larger majority of the county of our service area is in Stearns County. Followed by Todd County, 9.6% of our calls are in Todd County, and Douglas County is less than 1%, and then Pope County, we just have a small area in Pope County as well. So that's just 0.25% there that our calls are in their county. I have the township rundown. Sauk Center Township, of course, is our highest. The majority is Stearns County, Sauk Center Township. And then it goes down to Candota, Birchdale, Getty Township, Little Sauk Township, and West Union Township, and then down from there. And I have the patient race graph. The total for the patient race is for all 883 calls that we've had in 2022. For the no loads, it just defaults to the white. And then so that's not really accurate to say that 842 were that race. It's just the rest of them are the accurate numbers, though. 17% for Hispanic or Latino, and then 11% for Black and African American, and down from there. Patient age. The majority of our calls are ages 60 to 90. They account for 45.08% of all of our calls. And the next highest group is ages 19 and below, which is 7.81% when you group them together. But that's just the age breakdown. So that's why we have a lot of our no loads are assists for falls and lift assists, where we go out and help people up off the ground, and then they're not hurt, so we don't transport them in. So that's my my report. We are going to proceed forward with the I've talked to Vicki in the past about part-time ALS license. Right now, we're specialized ALS license, so we can take nurses on our ALS transfers. But beginning in August, CentraCare is pulling their nurses and aren't going to let us take nurses on our ALS transfers. So that means we have to give them up to another service that has an ALS license. So I feel it's in our best interest to proceed with the ALS part-time license. We do have 3 paramedics on our crew right now that can help with that and help with some of these ALS licenses. And I know there's a couple other paramedics in the area that have indicated in the past they'd be willing to be on our roster to help out with ALS calls. But if we go part-time ALS, not only will it help us with the ALS transfer so we don't lose that revenue, it also will help us if we have a medical call for a possible heart attack or a trauma where somebody's injured in a motor vehicle accident or a fall. If one of our paramedics is available and responds with, and they can administer medications and advanced support, airway support and stuff, then we can also charge ALS rates, the fees for those calls as well.
Okay.
Any questions for me?
I am just curious if you feel that, or if you know if the calls are down truly because of numbers and incidents, or because of maybe an increase in services in the surrounding communities, or availability of a licensed nurse when we don't have one, or that sort of thing.
Some of the ALS transfers are due to their nursing staff not available to take the transfers, and then they end up calling CentraCares, who they have a contract with, to take any ALS transfers right now that our hospital can't provide a nurse for. So part of it is losing some of our ALS transfers for that. Part of it is just, I can't even say it's COVID anymore related, why our numbers are down. I don't know why our numbers are down. I mean, this month already we had 98 calls in January. So, I mean, already they've spiked up. So
Sure.
was it just a fluke in those 3 months that we didn't have as many as we typically do?
Kathy, it's probably from us old people out there shoveling snow and having a heart attack.
That could be,
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments?
Congratulations on the award.
Yeah.
Your team.
appreciate it.
You bet.
We're pretty proud. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ambulance Department year-end billing. That must be Tim.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. On the financial, or the billing portion of the ambulance report, since the calls were down for the year, we also saw it on the financials also. We billed out 617 patients last year, which is a pretty drastic decrease over previous years. And we also then billed out substantially less. We billed out just over $730,000 worth of ambulance bills. We had a smaller collection decrease than last year. We collected a total of just over, I'll say just under $440,000. I did break out exactly where that money was collected. Majority was with our billing company that we contract with, and then we also collect from revenue recapture. Those are return files that our billing company could not collect, so then we enter them into the revenue recapture program, and they seize tax returns and lottery winnings as basic way they collect. We also have a collection agency that collected some money from us, and then we also have an agreement with Sauk Center Hospital to give you an example, to return a patient from the hospital to their home. We can't charge an insurance company for that, so we charge the hospital, and then the hospital pays a discounted rate for that. We did have an adjustments, which are Medicare, Medicaid, mandatory adjustments of $229,342.63. We also had to write off an additional $5,244.55. Those mainly are deceased patients that don't have any way to recoup any of the revenue. And we did enter 114, or just over $114,000 into the revenue recapture program this last year. I'm sorry, that was return files. We entered $51,148.06 into the revenue recapture program, and just shy of $52,000 into collections. Our billing company still has 353 open files. I've been working with them to try to get that number down to a reasonable number, and I also included the amount that they're still trying to bill out. So a lot of numbers, I understand, like usual. So is there any questions I can help you with?
Concerns? I guess it's kind of like when you look at the number of calls and the billing's bound to go down,
Right.
you know. Of course, if you work around numbers and there's a drop, you get concerned about it, but in a roundabout way, health-wise, lack of calls just means that's a good thing too.
Yeah,
Right.
we are solvent, and I would rather not charge the community out there, so
Right.
I'm okay with it.
Any other questions or comments? Okay,
Thank
good
you.
job. Thank you.
Thank you.
5D, Fire Department Annual Report. Steve? I'm glad you're here. I thought I was going to have to do it.
The Sauk Center Fire Department 2022 Annual Report. We'll start with response calls. Structure fires, in 2022, we had 18 compared to 10 in 2021. Grass fires were 16 in 2021 to 9 last year. Medicals and rescue calls, 31 in 2021 and 25 in 2022. Vehicle accidents and fires was 27 in 2021 and 28 in 2022. Gas, smoke, and alarm calls, we had 10 in 2021 and we had 21 in 2022. False or canceled calls, we had 32 in 2021 and 49 in 2022. Service calls were 8 in 21 and 5 in 2022 for a total of 155 calls in 2022 compared to 134 in 2021. Of those calls, response calls billed was $23,167. Response calls received from 2021 was $2,010. Response calls received from 2022 was $12,953. Unpaid was $6,040, and collections and write-offs was $2,305. Grants, reimbursements, and donations. Sauk Center Fire Relief was $80,000. Community Connection was $500. Harvest Outreach Incorporated was $1,000. Sauk Center CVB was $200. Minnesota National Bank was $272. Steve Boyning was $100. Scott and Lindsay Boyning was $100. Roger Boyning was $100. Eric Boyning was $100. Stelling Land and Cattle was $150. Dale Emma was a donation of $1,000. And Minnesota National Bank for Jean Day was $210 for a total of $83,732 in grants, reimbursements, and donations. Firefighters, one firefighter retired in 2022, and we hired 3 new ones in 2022. That's it.
Questions? Comments? Keep up the good work.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
5E, EDA report.
So the EDA met today in regular session at noon. They had a few items on their agenda. They did discuss the next steps in the Authors Edition development, kind of talked a little bit about pricing and the timelines. They are recommending proceeding with obtaining SHPO authorization for a Small Cities Development Partnership project grant which would replace the upper windows in the former Main Street Drug Building. That is an action item tonight. They're recommending approval of the TIF payment number 6 to Felling Trailers. That was for their office project. That is in your claims. And then they also discussed a new business development survey that's being conducted by a resident for his dissertation for a PhD applicant. So that'll be going around and we'll get the results of that. So you have one action item on this tonight, and that is under 7F.
Okay, questions, comments? Okay. And we do have one public hearing. We will recess the regular meeting and move into the public hearing, which is a preliminary hearing on the improvement and assessments for Author's Edition.
So this public hearing tonight, as you said, is the improvement on preliminary improvement and preliminary assessment. It was scheduled for today at 6:30 p.m. In addition to the city's property for Author's Edition, 7 parcels are subject to improvement and assessments. Notices were sent to all the owners informing them of this public hearing tonight. Keith here, as the city engineer, he's going to present the scope of the project along with the estimated costs for the project as a whole. In addition, we did calculate our individual assessments, which he's going to talk about. That's not something that we are adopting tonight, but we'll have a discussion on that, and I think there's some future work to be done there. What he's going to present is according to our existing policy. And then following the presentation, there will be action in the action portion of the agenda that it orders the improvement, and then we authorize us to complete the plans, and he'll come back on March 1st with that information. So here you go, Keith.
All right, we'll get started here in a second. I'm hoping my computer comes back. I'm sorry, the battery's not too good on it, and it started to die on me here, so just give me a second and I'll get this going. Okay. There we go. Okay, we are back in business. All right, this is the preliminary assessment and public improvement hearing for the Author's Edition. We've talked about this before. You've seen this as it relates to the platting and approval of the preliminary plat so far. So this gives you a little bit more detail on what the project's going to look like. Make sure this is on. Is it going? There we go. This gives you a little overview of the entire plat of what it will look like. As you can see, this is the entire plat of the Author's Edition in its entirety at some time in the future. We don't know exactly how long it will take before all of this gets developed, but right now we are focusing on phase 1, which is this area right here. We do have this tentatively broke out into 3 other phases that will occur sometime in the future, depending on how quickly lots sell through here. I do have marked a few of these are existing lots that are proposed to have assessments on them as it relates to our current assessment policy. A little bit closer. Okay. New utilities on the project, are typical. We do have one trunk sanitary sewer that goes through, a 10-inch line sanitary sewer that comes off of Kennecott and will go all the way up through the project and stub out of Hickman Drive ultimately, so that we can extend that to the north and to the west at some point in time in the future. 8-inch water main would also be included throughout the project. All right. There we go. We'll have new water services and new sewer services for all of the existing lots, and there are some existing lots that are out there. They're not on part of the actual Author's Edition. They're unserviced lots at this point in time that would be serviced with this, or at least proposed to be serviced with this project as well, which relates to some of the assessments that we'll talk about in a minute. Storm sewer will also be in there. There's collection, and there's 2 treatment ponds. If you notice on the earlier slide that there are ultimately 2 treatment ponds prior to that large wetland area, which will be where all the drainage will go to. With phase one of those would be constructed. Street improvements would be our typical 36-foot street with sidewalks on one side of the street is what's proposed at this time. There is also a 10-foot trail that goes kind of from the south end on Hendricks over to Ferry Lake and then goes to the north and all the way up to Hickman at some point in time in the future. We would do the first phase of it as through phase one relayed with these improvements. That street section is our typical street section, 8-inch aggregate base, 2 inches of bituminous base course, and a 1.5 inches bituminous wearing course. These are the improvements. A little hard to see on the sewer and water, but the sewer starts from here and runs all the way up. This is what we were calling half-a-day drive now, so this would run up this direction. Hendricks actually goes down to here, and this from the north on Hendricks actually comes down to here as well. So all this ultimately flows out through half-a-day drive down here to the existing intersection through here. This is one of the ponds that I talked about earlier. This is where all the storm sewer for this area, as well as other areas, future areas to the north, will ultimately drain through here and be treated before it discharges into the wetland complex down here. We do propose a future discharge from this wetland area that would come out into the lake. This would not be part of phase one. This would occur, we'll have to discuss it, but maybe in phase two or phase three is when we'd want to consider putting that in, but it wouldn't be associated with this. Because we have stub streets here, we would have temporary cul-de-sacs that would be put in at this location and this location as well. Phase two is this portion just north of here, at least what we proposing at the moment. So this cul-de-sac ultimately would disappear at the next phase, and this one would remain. When the phase three is done, then this one would disappear, and there wouldn't be any other temporary cul-de-sacs within the remainder of the development proposed at this point in time. These are the lots because we do have sanitary sewer that would be servicing. This is an existing lot. These lots, all of these areas, this one, with the exception of this piece right here, all of these were added, being bought from the Myers at some point in time, different points in time over the past years, and none of these parcels have been assessed for sewer, for water, for storm sewer, depending on their situation for all of these. Colstrom is one that's on this corner that isn't existing. The only thing with this parcel is the street assessments that would be taking place because the new street comes all the way down to here. They don't have currently any street adjacent to there in the side yards through here. And this street over here on Hendricks actually didn't completely go all the way through the lots, and then there's the added portion that was added to this particular lot, and then this one is an entirely separate lot through here. For these parcels, this part right here and this part right here were actually purchased and added to this an existing lot 3 here, existing lot 4, so they were added onto here. This does allow the opportunity for these lots to be, for these pieces to be split off, combined, and be a buildable lot through here. The same thing for this piece here, which is actually part of this parcel, parcel 6. This could be split off and could be a buildable lot through here. So that's just something to be thinking about as we talk about the assessments here in just a little bit. This estimated construction costs are just over $1.3 million for this project. It is noted that actually about half the total earthwork to do the mass grading for the entire author's edition, all 4 phases, is within that first phase, unfortunately. So there's a higher cost associated with doing this first phase, and it'll be a little bit cheaper on a per lot basis, if you will, moving forward. So here's the estimated. Oops, I'm sorry. Going forward here. This the existing proposed project development easement costs, design costs, construction administration, all of these soft costs put together. We do have some contingencies still put in there for total project costs of just under $1.3 million for that first phase. Assessments for this are shown here with the streets, $133 per linear foot. This is by front foot. Sanitary sewer, this water main, you can see those costs. Sanitary sewer services, about $1,900. Water service, about $2,500. Storm sewer, which is on a square foot basis, is 36 cents per square foot. The cost breakdowns, total project cost, once again, just about $1.28 million. The assessable cost, this is based upon our current assessment policies, is that 157, just short of $500. Those are for those lots that I had that were highlighted earlier, which leaves then the city cost, which is all the development, of just over $1.1 million. The assessment breakdowns are as shown. It's a little small up here. I do believe you have some sheets in front of you at the council level here, so yeah, I'm not sure. Unfortunately, it's a little small up there. But as an example, this first one is one of the Becker's lots. That's that whole lot that's to the north. It's on Hendricks on the east side. That one has full street, all full assessments for sewer and water, storm, and everything on that particular lot. The one to the south, which is this one here, is the Beckers as well, and there is a small piece of street that has not been, because the street didn't go all the way through that full lot, so it was only the most part of it, but there's still 20-some feet left over there. That's what that is. The next one here is and I apologize if I say someone's name incorrectly here, but Mainings across the street, there was parcels that were added or land that was added to that parcel. So there is a street assessment for that additional footages, as well as they have the same thing just like across the street, where there's a little bit of parcel of the original parcel that had not had street in front of it. And then the remainder of that is storm sewer for that particular land that was added and never assessed. The next one down is we get to Malika. So we have two parcels for Malika. Once again, these are storm sewer assessments. So that's all storm for the back one. This is the westerly, I believe, of those two parcels. And then move forward here. There we go. Actually, there's two. Sorry, I missed two. There was two of Malika. It must have been two.
Yeah, there's two.
There's two Malika. Where is the? Why am I not seeing that one?
Number 5.
Malika, 1, 2, 3, 4.
4 and 5.
4 and 5 are Malika.
Yeah, I must have them together. I'm not sure. Sorry, I missed. But that one's a storm sewer. On the other one, plus the street assessment.
Sanitary and water, too.
And sanitary and water, because once again, we looked at it as that's the ability for that to be a combined lot and be able to be a sellable lot. So
Right.
that's why those were put together at this point in time. The other is Colstrom, which is across the street, so that's the east side of Half a Day Drive, and that one is looking at, remember the 150-foot side yard credit, so it's the remainder for the street, as well as the sewer and the water for those areas as well. And the last one then is the Arens, which is that larger parcel, which is combined with Lot 6. Once again, that's able to be split off, so that essentially is really a full assessment against that portion of that lot that was added for the streets and the sewer and water services and those kinds of things, storm sewer for that particular area. So that's how the assessments were broken down. It's based upon our current assessment policy, which would be 100% assessed for those new improvements, as opposed to our reconstruct, which we've seen much more recently. So with that, I'll turn it back to the mayor for any questions from the council for me.
Council have any questions, concerns? We're not adopting these tonight, so that isn't,
Yeah, this is preliminary.
This
so
is
these
just
are not-
preliminary
this is not
for
the
us to
final
look at.
assessment hearing.
one of the things you had mentioned, there's a lot of grading that needs to be done in that first section, and I was wondering, I know that one hill, you've got the soil borings, I don't know how big, but
Yeah.
I mentioned it to Vicky, and I don't know if she talked to you about it, but I was wondering, is there any way to bring the cost down if whoever wants it could do all the bulldozing and everything and then capture the cost of the gravel that's in there?
Well, perhaps, if you're talking, if it's for fine gravel, or you're talking about just the sand that's.
Well,
in
the
there?
sand, from what I understand, that highest point is
Yeah.
pretty much a gravel pit.
Yeah,
And-
most all of it out there is sand, most of it, with the exception of a couple small areas, everything we found is nice sandy material out there. We could look at that. I'm not sure if it would really save us anything to try and take some dirt out of there and be able for someone to process that. They would need, for it to be economical for them, they would need to have a decent enough volume to make it economical to take it out of there and process it. They would probably want to process it on site. That's usually the cheaper versus hauling it away, and that causes some time concerns. So I don't think that's probably in our best interest to do that. I'm not sure that would really save us anything and probably would cause us time delays more than anything to do something like that. But I can think about it a little bit more and see if there's anything we could come up with for that. I do know, just so we don't want to have, it is sandy soils, but there is a good amount of topsoil that's in that area. So we won't have any issues with not having enough topsoil, for people to grow grass and whatnot on afterwards. So once that grading's done, there's plenty of topsoil out there.
Okay, so if they both do spread out that hill, there's enough topsoil to go back over the top of
Yeah.
it, so you
Yeah,
don't have us start out with a sand front yard.
I wish there was less topsoil, actually. So there's,
Okay.
there's like, on average, there's 16 to 20 inches of topsoil out there. So it's a fair amount.
Okay. Council have any other questions?
Are your cost estimates based on 2022 numbers, or has your firm seen bids come in so far that kind of project similar numbers?
Yeah, it's really early in the year, so we haven't really gotten any bids yet. It's everything that we know through 2022 and, close to the end of 22 of what those numbers are, that our cost estimates are based upon. We do our best, as you know, but things can change. The things seem to be a little more stable at the moment. They're still high, but they're not going up rapidly, and they're not also coming down rapidly. So I think we're in pretty good shape with the numbers, but we never know until we actually go out to the bidding environment. But we feel pretty good about them at the moment and what we think the industry is doing.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Okay, thank you, Keith. Is there any of the residents that are affected want to speak in favor? Want to come up to the mic and state your name and address, please?
Dennis Beckers, 305 Hendricks. Yes, I did have a little bit of questions about that. When did the sidewalks come into play here? I don't know why we would really necessarily need sidewalks there. I think the people on the east side live well without sidewalks. I think that would be an unnecessary cost to put in the sidewalks.
Okay.
And also that, you talked about that hill, but there's all that sand on that hill was put there by the city at one time. I don't know, that's just what I was told. When they built those homes along the creek there, they hauled all that sand out and dumped it up in that hill, that area. So that built all that sandy hill out there.
Yeah, I have no idea on that one whether or not, because so long as I've been born and raised in town, and I don't remember anybody hauling anything. It's
Well,
always
that's
been
what I
a
was
field,
told
so,
by somebody that lives out there,
right.
So
Okay.
I'm just really not in favor of putting sidewalks up there.
Okay.
No. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Sure.
My name is Norma Manning, 308 Hendrick Street. I wasn't at the last meeting because I was ill, but I just heard a few things, so I just wanted to comment. and I have a few questions. Number one, will there be any patio homes planned in that development? I don't know if you want to answer me now or later, after I ask all my questions.
As of right now, no.
No?
Um, in their single, they could,
Yeah,
yeah, but they're single-family dwellings,
Okay.
no apartment
So the
houses
city
and.
doesn't want to push for any patio homes in there at all?
If a developer would come in and buy a bunch of lots and decide to put patio homes on them, they could.
Okay.
But as of right now, we have no idea what, they're just single-family homes, that's all we got the requirements on.
Because I think most of them in town that are here are full already now.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Why, you mentioned something about the assessments on the first round of work will be more? Why? Would cost more?
First round of,
Maybe I
Oh.
didn't understand that.
the grading.
oh, the grading, okay, yeah. That hill that's behind, that Dennis was referring to, needs to be leveled off.
That's beside our lot, right?
Okay,
I thought.
yeah, that needs to be brought down. Keith, can you explain it better as far as why it's more for bringing it to grade for making the lots buildable,
Well, I.
is the way I
think
understand it.
have to be.
And make sure that, and then for the street also.
I think Keith said it's nearly 50% of the entire project's grading work.
Perhaps I could answer your question. For one is, first of all, it relates to the cost. Even though there's the majority of the earthwork for the entire developments, with the 4 phases is in this first, for the assessment purposes wise, that has been spread out over all. So that's not weighted towards just number 1. So all those, because that's part of the street costs, and that hasn't been all put for phase 1 on those street costs. They've been spread out, so some of those costs would be on the future, essentially, out there. So we're paying for them now, if you will, but from the assessment perspective, they're not being put, they're being put
Right.
evenly across
Yeah.
for the street improvements for it, yes.
So-
And in terms of patio homes, remember it's preliminary plat, so when we go to final platting of future phases, things could change. The council may wish to have something a little bit different. Some of those lots are larger for single family. They could be made a little bit narrower, made for more patio homes. That could be done, in future phases. So that's really up to the council and the EDA to kind of make those decisions later on.
Okay, I heard something about a walking path being done, and I think I would prefer that rather than sidewalks also. And could that walking path be, where would it be put? Close to Berry Lake Road? Is that what
Yeah.
that's what we're thinking?
Yep.
On the old railroad bed then, or?
Right, pretty much, yes.
Okay.
Yep.
See, it'll come, I know, then it would be in the backyard. So how would that work?
Well, I'd be more likely on the right-of-way, the county road right-of-way. It wouldn't be actually, right.
Okay,
I wouldn't be actually on their property.
right,
Right.
okay. If that becomes a walking path, could the city get grant money to help pay for that, a trail or a walking path from somewhere?
Anything's possible. There's safe routes to school, grant money, stuff like that,
Yeah.
that we'd be able to. We're exploring possibilities all the time as far as trying to bring costs down.
That's a
Not
good
just for
idea.
that or everything else around town. So,
Yeah, I think that's good, if we can spread the cost
yep,
to other people and other counties or whatever that would be connected with that trail,
mhm,
you know?
so, yep.
Okay. Let's see. Oh, one suggestion I had is if you do build a walking trail or walking path, could there be a parking area on maybe both ends or something? So you could leave your car and then you could go walk,
That's always a possibility. It depends on how we lay it out. We've just done the preliminary plat right now. We haven't really got into a final design on the rest of it. We're just kind of focusing on the south end right now, on getting hopefully 19 lots for sale and get that up and going,
I
so,
was thinking about accessibility to that trail for people.
right, yep, so.
Okay.
There's a lot of moving parts that we haven't got completely finalized yet. I know that's an open-ended thing, but that's how this usually works.
I think that's all I had.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Anyone else that would like to speak? Last minute questions to staff? Otherwise, we will close our public hearing and re-enter into our normal council meeting. 7A, approve resolution 2023-11, ordering improvement for author's edition.
So now that you've had the public hearing, if you desire to proceed with the improvement of Author's Edition project, you should adopt the attached resolution, which actually orders the improvement to be done. If you have any major modifications, you should outline them at this time. The resolution does not adopt the assessment. I know some people had some questions about that. It just authorizes next steps. The next steps are to complete the plans. That's ongoing. We expect to approve those plans on March 1st, which is 2 meetings from now. We would advertise for bids during the month of March. We'd open the bids on the end of March on the 29th, and then on the April 5th meeting, we would expect to award the bids. Then with construction in the summer of 2023, we'd have the final assessment hearing and adoption of the assessment in October. So it gives us between now and October to finalize how those assessments are going to work. This is a little bit different project than we've worked on before, that you have worked on before, simply because it is a new development, and how do we deal with those existing properties. Typically, when lots are split off or developed, the seller or the buyer is responsible to extending the utilities in the street past the property. In this situation, we couldn't extend city sewer 100 feet at a time. It wasn't feasible to do that. And so that is why these different lots are out there, that utilities and roads had not been extended past at the time the lots were created. So I did have a question. Somebody asked me that. I thought I would clarify that. So anyway, after that, we'll have probably some meetings and some more discussion on the assessments before that final assessment is heard. And then we'll certify those assessments in November of 2023. So we have some time to work on that. So I have the resolution in front of you ordering that improvement. You will notice there is one section in there on number 4 that we declare our intent to utilize bonds to provide for payment. That's simply in there in case we decide to do it. If you recall, in January, we did the IRS resolution authorizing it. This just keeps our options open if that's how we choose to finally fund the project. So right now, I'm looking to approve resolution 2023-11, ordering the improvement of the author's edition.
Questions?
I just had one question because we had discussed it at the or at the last meeting, that we'd like to see the bids come in with both a sidewalk option and without a sidewalk option. That's still part of what we're going to request from bids.
We had it separate as an addendum, I believe.
Right.
The intention is to have it so the sidewalks are able to be split out of the
Okay.
project. So that's the way we'll have it set up.
Okay.
And to clarify, there was a question on that trail, just so, the trail will be like Becker's, that north lot, it'll be entirely north of that, and then it'll go up, it'll actually be within the plat of Author's Edition, so it won't be inside the county right-of-way, it'll be outside, there'll be an easement for it through there. And the right-of-ways actually will be wider than what it currently is for the county road. It's, I think, 33 feet, and it'll be 50 feet now for half right-of-way up there, so it'll be a little wider.
Okay, so basically, the trail's going to end at their property line?
It'll go up to the edge and go up to the edge of Phase 1, and it's got to stop. So currently, it'll be sort of a dead-end thing. It's probably best to put it in. We could put it in later, but the problem is then, the lots that are adjacent to it, they do all their landscaping, and then you come in and tear it up, and it's probably easier if we put it in to sort of a dead end, and then eventually we'll just, with the next well, actually, it wouldn't be the Phase 3, we would tie onto it and continue to the north, ultimately all the way up to Hickman. And that would leave an area where someone could park. You know, you could park on the edge of Hickman and walk down one way and walk back, or you could park along Hendricks and walk the other way. So you could, I mean, you can park on the street. There wouldn't be, we don't have a parking lot proposed, but I don't think there'll be that much traffic where someone
Right.
could just park in the street.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Remember, this vote doesn't, we're not adopting the assessments. Do I have a motion to approve Resolution 2023-11?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Diane, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Heidi. Any more discussion? Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries 5 in favor, none against. 7B, approve Resolution 2023-12, Final Restoration Order, Shoreline Alteration 2022-01.
So the Planning Commission, at its meeting on December 13th, approved a shoreline alteration restoration order for property located at 843 Lakeshore Drive, owned by John and Connie Weiss. The owners had installed riprap, retaining walls, a gravel pad, a walkway, and a lawn area on property located within 75 feet of the setback from Sauk Lake. Recorded on this property and others along the length of Sauk Lake is a conservation easement, the city code relating to the shoreline ordinance and protective covenants. Conservation easements are voluntary agreements through which landowners agree to limit the future use and development of their property to permanently preserve its natural features. The purpose of the Lake Ridge Conservation Easement is to manage the effects of shoreline crowding, prevent pollution of surface and groundwaters, provide ample space of lots for residential structure, to maintain property values, to maintain the essential natural character of the restricted property, to prevent erosion, and to balance development with preservation of the natural character of the restricted property. So this is all the way from Highway 71 to Old Main along that section of Sauk Lake. When that plat was developed, that conservation easement was recorded. That is the most restrictive of the governances and is enforceable by the Department of Natural Resources, Stearns County, Sauk River Watershed, the city, and any individual owner or group of owners encumbered by the agreement. The other legislative bodies subject to this agreement, meaning the DNR, Stearns County, and the watershed, have given the city the task of enforcement on all their behalfs. However, this does not prohibit any of them from becoming a party to any claim. The DNR remains the enforcing body for any work done lakeward of the OHW or ordinary high water mark. So if you're in the water, you're DNR. If you're on the land or of the ordinary high water mark, which could be a foot or two onto the land or not, that is the kind of the land of demarcation of whose territory it is to enforce. The Lake Ridge Conservation Easement allows for the removal of vegetation to create a viewing corridor 20 feet wide, which is like limb up the trees, etc., and the installation of a stairway no more than 4 feet wide, and a docking area at the lake for properties that are classified as those with a steep slope, which is a 12% to 30% grade. The alleged violation that we're talking about included land alteration by grading, which basically stair-stepped the slope within the setback area with riprap and rock walls. The vegetation removal included the removal of the natural vegetation that existed and was replaced with turf grass. In addition, a Class 2 gravel path was installed to allow for access to the lake via a side-by-side ATV. City staff, after becoming aware of the violation, sent a notice to the landowner to restore the shore to its previous condition. The landowner appealed that decision of the staff to the Planning Commission, and the Commission upheld the staff's interpretation that a violation had occurred. However, authorized the landowner and the city engineer to work on a compromise solution rather than a complete removal. The landowner worked with the city engineer and staff on a restoration order which allowed some of the installation to remain while attempting to meet the purposes of the easement. The end result was a Planning Commission approved an order which includes the removal of some of the gravel pad at the base of the hill, the planting of various plants and shrubs to camouflage the walls to maintain a portion of the natural character of the area. They were of the opinion that to require the walls and riprap to be removed would cause more damage to the hillside than leaving them in place. This order is before the council tonight for ratification. I did include excerpts from the conservation easement and a copy of the Planning Commission's letter of decision, which has been attached, along with some before and after photos. The conservation easement, I did underline for you what it talks about, what they can do in steep slope lots and as far as shoreline alteration, and I'm not going to read that for you tonight. But then when you get down to, you have the before and after picture, and then the resolution, which is actually on page 44, which actually depicts in language terms exactly what they have to do, which is remove the crushed granite in Class 2 from the edge of the shoreline riprap to the edge of the second wall, with the exception of a dock access path. Plant native vegetation at the top of the shoreline riprap to establish root mass in the form of dwarf bush honeysuckle or a similar planting, and plant native plants at the top of the second tier retaining wall in the form of woodbine vines that will crawl down the wall to minimize the view of the wall from the public waters. Then they also had in there that the work shall commence April 1st or at a date determined by the city engineer that work can begin and shall be completed by June 30th, 2023. There's also no building or zoning permits to be issued on the property until all requirements have been completed and all vegetation is substantially completed. And then also we have a separate order which is the fine that was imposed. Do you have any questions? I know that's a lot of data. I tried to get it out to you ahead of time.
Questions, concerns? Planning Commission spent a lot of time on working on this. Property owner was very easy to work with as far as understanding that they didn't get a permit and they were willing to work with us to get it changed back. The only thing he has a little problem with is the fine, but he does understand that he was in the wrong. So this one was one of them that we kind of met halfway.
Okay.
The one thing is, the way I understand it is if he gets done and the DNR comes by and they look at it and still don't think they can impose something else up and above what we recommend.
The DNR, if there's an issue with the DNR, that would be a separate thing by them.
Right. And I did reach out to the DNR, the woman that was in contact with Sarah, and asked for a written statement because in government, if it's in black and white in front of us, it holds a little more water. So I reached out. She has yet to respond, as she hasn't responded to Sarah now for over a month either. So I will be walking in the door and finding out what's going on, why they won't stand up and put it in black and white. So what is the council's wishes on this one?
Well, I'll make a motion that we approve what the Planning Commission approved.
Okay,
I'll second that.
okay, we have a motion by Diane, second by Joe. And then the fine, we discussed that, it's at a different time?
That's 7D, I believe.
That's a
it's
different
down.
action.
That's a different action, okay, yeah. Okay, any other questions or concerns? Call the question, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries 5 in favor, none against. 7C, approve resolution 2023-13, final restoration order, shoreline alteration 2022-02.
So on this one, the Planning Commission on December 13th approved a shoreline alteration restoration order for property at 831 Lake Ridge Drive, owned by Lee and Chris Umshank. They also had graded the property by installing riprap retaining walls, a sand beach, and a turf lawn area, along with tree removal on property located, and it was all within the 75 setback back from Sauk Lake. I'm not going to reread all the information. It's the same regarding the conservation easement and the purpose of that conservation easement. This alleged violation included land alteration by stair-stepping the slope within the setback area with riprap and walk walls. Vegetation removal included the removal of the natural vegetation and multiple large growth trees that existed on the hillside, which were removed by both the landowner and a spring storm. The natural vegetation was replaced with turf grass and a sand beach. In addition, a stairway that had previously provided lake access was removed. I understand there was some damage to that. City staff, after becoming aware of the installation, sent a notice to the landowner to restore the shore to its previous condition. The landowner appealed that decision of the staff to the Planning Commission. And this one as well, the commission upheld the staff's interpretation a violation had occurred, and they approved a restoration order to restore the area, which included removing the riprap at the water's edge, the sand blanket, remove the turf grass up to the first wall above the riprap. Additionally, native plantings were to be installed in the removal area and up to the third wall, along with planting taller native plantings. So this has a much more extensive restoration order because it was much more extensive work that had been done. The owner requested that she be given the opportunity to respond and is before the council, as you saw in the open forum, requesting an amendment to that restoration order before you adopt it. She's requesting to be allowed to keep the riprap along the shore and the sand blanket beach and to keep the turf area down to the sand. And a site plan was provided to you showing what she plans to do. I did show that, and it's on page 54 of your packet, by the way. And then I did send that on to the city engineer for review, and then he provided some comments, which you had in front of you, which was if they were to keep the riprap, then they would want willow stakes within the riprap driven through the geotex underlayment. And those willow stakes are basically live branch stakes that go through that then the willows will grow through and help stabilize that riprap. And then also to put some native plantings in that turf area to kind of overtake that turf, still allowing for the path to go through, but it would have more of a deep root because it's quite a steep hillside there. A little different from the other one that the turf area is more flat, as the turf area is steeper in that area, so it suggested some native plantings in that area. And that in addition with her planting plan that talks about the different vines and the different plantings that she plans to do, and then also the trees. We saw in the packet that you were provided, I think there's a substantial number of trees that would be planted, and they have to be larger trees, you know, not buggy whip trees. They have to have a 3-inch diameter, you know, at shoulder height or so. So I know that's a lot of detail. I know that you had it ahead of time and you've had some opportunity to come in and talk to me. I don't know if you have any additional questions. So the Planning Commission had approved that order, and then she's asking to make these amendments to it that the city engineer then has responded to. So the resolution in the packet does not have the changes in it yet, so if you are amenable to allowing some of those things to remain, then we would want to make sure that we clarify that when we adopt the resolution.
Questions? Concerns? One of the things, being on the Planning Commission, obviously you can look at the overhead view on 47 and see that this was a major disruption of anything that shoreland ordinances, the conservation easement, everything. I basically, we need to look at, there's kind of like 3 things we can do. We can uphold the Planning Commission's action, or we can sit tonight and do the debate over what changes we want to do with what she's handed us and review the whole property thing again. Or we can go back to what Sarah's original was before it came to the Planning Commission, before it was appealed, where everything from the house to the lake gets totally restored and put back to normal. Bluff and everything. You do it without a permit, you kind of got to suffer the consequences. Couple things is, and I think we've all had communication with the property owner, or at least had notification from them, but we have to look at the pure fact that, and she stated in her minute that there's other properties along that property line that have done stuff and did a formal complaint on these other properties. So This is just the start.
Yeah.
So if we don't draw the line in the sand on what we're gonna do, we're gonna be in a world of hurt as far as the city council. And it's been stated many times, this council does not like to enforce anything. We just throw rules out, but we never enforce anything. And it's kind of like, now we're getting it shoved in our face. The property owner's been in City Hall probably just about every day since the notice, fighting everything that we've ever came up with. There's two things that I would like to see added to it, to whatever action. But there won't be, I want no permits for structural or landscape between the back of their house to the lake shore for 25 years. That means no sheds, no pools, no nothing. You lost that right. Also, access to the property will be given to assure that any plantings or anything restoration-wise is still there and healthy. Not that they would purposely let it die, but, you know, if you're not happy with the decision, it's pretty easy not to water it.
I know that the planning commission has spent an awful lot of time on these properties. And if that's their recommendation, I would recommend we go with it.
With what the planning commission has.
That is correct. And I would have no problem adding that addendum on that you mentioned for 25 years.
Both of them?
Yes,
Or access?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, that's my motion.
Now that I've said my piece, has anybody got anything to say?
I do have concerns with removing that riprap at the shoreline potentially. I mean, we take that out and with all the modifications and everything that's occurred there, we just setting it up for more erosion and the issues that should have been prevented, should have never occurred had, this clear cut and this whole change. I mean, this is, it's excessive. I just can't believe that people knowing what the rules are would just go ahead and do this and then ask for forgiveness after the fact. I mean, you can't tell me that we weren't aware that this should not have been done. I mean, asking for grace after the fact is, yes, but at this point it's there, and I think we go back to the full restoration and stuff. We're just asking for, trouble anyways there. So now we got to find out what's the best for the city, and obviously they're asking for exactly what they want. I don't think we should give them everything they want after what's been done here, but we got to look at preserving that integrity to the lake and some of those things as well with this. It's just unfortunate that we've got to this point.
It's that conservation easement basically stated that's the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
And everybody along that property knew it. In fact, one of the houses I know that was built, and it wasn't by them, came along and knew that they couldn't go 75 feet closer to the lake with anything that was done.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, they ignored that. And if with the ones that I know that are supposedly coming up on the docket in the future, this isn't gonna go away.
Yeah.
If we just give in and do whatever,
You're going to set a precedent, you'll have to do it for everybody then.
well,
Yeah.
that's what the rules are there, it's for everybody, not for us to pick and choose.
Yep.
And concerning the situation of how many times staff hasn't been able to do their job because they're visiting for an hour, hour and a half because of, I don't understand, since they got the letter, we need to nip that problem in the butt and be done with it.
So can I clarify, is your motion the one that the planning commission did?
Right.
Or the one that after the
No, it's
after we
to
reviewed
enforce what
the-
the planning commission decided, plus adding the other on the 25
I
years.
just wanted to clarify one thing, because I know it'll come up probably later, is that when the planning commission did the first one that we already approved, you know, there was the first meeting, and then the landowner was given the opportunity to work with the engineer on the restoration order, and it was adopted at the second one. On this particular one, it was adopted at the first meeting, and that is why she's requesting an opportunity to respond to that with her amendment. So I just wanted to make sure that you understood that part of it. And then, so if you are looking at specifically what the resolution is that the planning commission initially adopted, are you including the things that Warren had said in your motion? Okay. I just wanted to make sure I understood that
Yep.
correctly.
I need to clarify that as well. So what is written in this motion, removing all riprap, removing turf grass, plant native ground vegetation, plant a row of taller, plus what Warren said, is what the motion,
Right, the
Is how the
resolution
motion
that's in there,
stands.
plus what Warren said, yes.
Yes.
so it's not allowing this.
No, it's
No.
this, it's
Okay.
this one with the blue removal area.
All right,
I understand Joe's position as far as the retaining walls. It could. But originally, Sarah stated restore it back to normal. We know it can be done. It can be put fabric down, it can be plugged, it can be done everything, and brought to the same elevations it was before they ever even turned a shovel back there. Do we want to go to that extent? I don't know. Planning Commission tried to work with the property owner. It isn't working. That's the reason why all the appeals. So your motion is to go with what the Planning Commission did at the first meeting then?
Yes.
What's stated here?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Because I had also heard Joe say go back to full restoration, so I wasn't sure which way
No, yeah, that
you
was
meant.
just, I mean, if we went to that point, I mean, again, I'm looking at this new plan, and that riprap still being there, the sand, in my mind, needs to be gone, for sure. And then these native plantings with the slope and some of those things to prevent that runoff and stuff in between the lake. But again, I just,
The one thing about turf grass is they're not gonna hold any water back.
yeah, that's where you got
It isn't gonna catch it. And I'm not an engineer, but I'm pretty sure that even Keith would agree that's not gonna work on that type of slope. It's gonna run, it's gonna erode, it's gonna wash out around the end of the retaining walls until we get everything back into place. Any other discussion? Okay, we have a motion to uphold,
Is there a second?
what's that?
Was there a second?
Not yet.
not yet.
Okay.
We got a motion by Diane to uphold what the planning commission did and add the two items that I stated should be added, which is no permits will be allowed for anything between the house and the lake for any reason for 25 years. Then the other one is that we are able to have access to the property to check to make sure everything back there stays the way it's supposed to and at any time we request to it. Do I have a second? I will second it. Any other discussion?
Go ahead.
I just want to clarify on that motion with the 25 years, does that remain if the property owners sell to someone else?
Yeah, it stays, this resolution will be
Stays
recorded
with
on
the
the property
property.
and it'll go with the land.
Okay.
My clarification I guess I've got is which page are we looking at here? There are so many, there's so many pieces that
Oh,
are
as mean
going.
as far as the
Yeah, what was it? This section here is
Yep, the one you're looking at.
what we're talking about? Okay.
page
50, I think,
55 is the resolution.
55.
That's
50 would be
describing.
the
Oh,
picture.
okay, got it.
And then we have those 2 additions that I requested.
Yep.
Okay?
So this resolution takes out the sand, takes everything in that blue removal area on page 50 that it shows, takes out the riprap, takes out the sand,
Yep,
and that turf on that steep slope.
right. And then they still have to plant native ground vegetation with deep roots.
Right,
Yeah, all of that. Trees have to be, we're giving them leeway 1 to 3 inches in diameter at about 4 feet high. Trees will be a mixture of sizes. And all erosion and sediment control measures will be installed prior to work taking place.
So aside from the blue then, is the rest of it, I mean, just adding the trees and whatever
Correct.
else, the rest of this is staying, correct?
correct. It just has plantings.
Okay.
I seconded, we got a motion and a second, and we're on discussion, but, after the vote, if you decide you want to get rid of some retaining walls and go move that, make that a larger scope, we can do it. I think they're still winning on the situation because we're not making them do anything up closer to the house. That's part of the reason why I said no permits for anything for 25 years. So if you come along and want a shed on your flat land back there, it's not gonna happen. If you want a pool, it's not gonna happen. Any other questions or concerns? Otherwise, I will call this question.
I guess I'm kind of in the same line as where Joe is, just about questioning on that riprap that's down there. That's the only part of it that's a little bit hanging up for me, is what will that do? Or, I don't know.
Oh, you mean as far as erosion?
Right.
Actually, nobody really knows where the high water mark is, so that could be, the DNR could come in later and make them tear it out anyway, because they're within 10 feet of the high water mark. It is? Okay. 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 Well,
I guess, and to add to a comment that you made, I guess, to me, I mean, even looking at this overhead view on page 47, I mean, it does feel like there was a lot of extensive work done.
yeah, it's way past. Or the option is we just make them restore it back to the way it was before they even turned the first shovel. And we know it can be done. Because if you put enough fabric down and plug it and put everything else in, but we have to act on the motion that we have on the table right now. My whole thing is this never should have gotten to this point.
No.
All it would have taken is a walk in the door and get a permit. I'm gonna call the question on this motion. If it doesn't pass, then we can move on to the next, what we need. If someone else has got something else. Call the question. Everybody understands the motion?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Abstentions? Motion carries. 4 in favor, 1 against. Okay. 7D, improve implementation of fines, shoreline alteration for both properties.
So this is finally, or following the approval of the restoration orders for the properties at 843 and 831 Lake Ridge Drive. The Planning Commission recommended fines based upon the time the letter was sent notifying the owners of the violation until the time that we came to some resolution and attended the meeting. The deadline was set with additional fines to be added if those deadlines were not met. A day of April 1st or a date established by the engineer that work could begin was set. The city calls for administrative penalties of $100 per day, the city code. So they had fined 2,800 to 843 Lake Ridge Drive and 5,800 to 831 Lake Ridge Drive. Both have appealed the assessment of the fine to the city council. So you do have some options. You can uphold that fine, you can amend it. I did give you some options as far as modification. Some other places that have done it have set flat fees and then just added costs to that, like engineering fees or whatever, and then also have that if restoration isn't complete by a certain date. So that's an option that you can have, and I put an example on there for you. Another way to go is just to go right back to the first day that we know work began and do the $100 a day, and you know, so you have options here. I don't know. The Planning Commission just counted calendar days when they did it. Obviously, we didn't start it until October when we sent the first letter, although we know the work admittedly began earlier than that. We didn't count those days. So I don't know how you want to proceed with that, if you've had a chance to look at that and to give it just some consideration. You certainly have the option just to uphold the fines as presented, and you have the option to modify them. You have the option to remove them in their entirety.
And why the difference in the two fines? Is there a reason that the one is higher than the other?
They had a couple of reasons for that. One was the timeline, and the other one was they felt that the second one was a more egregious violation than the first one.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Concerns?
Well, we did vote on the fines when we set the costs for the city, the licenses and the fines and all that. We've already voted on that.
Right, so that's what city code says.
Yes, that's what
The
city code
administrative
says.
penalties are $100 per day.
And they both they both provided you've been provided with letters from both parties with their justification of what they feel is fair.
The main thing is we could probably reduce it down to a flat fee, but then, okay, if it's too small and I'm gonna do something, I'm just gonna work that into my project cost by saying, well, it's gonna cost me $5,000 to do this, and the city will only fine me this because
Yeah.
they don't follow their code. So I'll just work that into my costs, and then I'll pay the fine and I'll walk away and I'll be happy. I don't think things like that should work.
What did the Planning and Zoning Commission decide?
The numbers that you have in front of you, the 2,800 and the 5,800.
Okay.
And basically, both properties are getting a break because we know for a fact, and the property owners have admitted it to us, that they actually started at the beginning of August. So we could actually add another 60 days onto there, another $6,000 apiece if we wanted to. So the Planning Commission, I think, was pretty gracious in starting from the day that they received the letter.
Yep. Well,
Anyone have any comments?
I guess I look at these fine amounts and the fact they're different. I think they should be the same. I know the one with the lower total actually started his work well in advance. Actually had finished before the other property owner started their work. I mean, 2,800 and 5,800, I think I modify them to a flat fee. And I think it actually should be more than that $2,800 number for the other property owner, plus the engineer fees. I mean, a $5,000 fine plus any engineering fees that we incurred, for review of this.
Okay. Because that's what, part of the reason of the $100 is because somebody's got to pay all the administrative fees and somebody's got to pay for or the administrative time, and someone's gotta pay for an engineer and stuff like that, so, you know, if we go both of them at 5,000,
Do we have an estimate of how much engineering time has been spent on working with these two modifications?
I don't have, you can probably ask him that, but I don't have the bills yet for the most recent ones, so I can't give you a dollar amount. I think it's gonna be, one of them's probably gonna be close to 1,000, I suppose, and then the other one is somewhat less than that, so.
and we're not even done yet, because he's gotta keep reviewing what's happening. So that's kind of a running total right now, so we really don't have, you know, until the whole project is done and he signs off on it. We could have a running bill on the engineer cost, so it could end up being a lot more.
So then we'd have to clarify that in that motion, that it's a flat fee plus engineering fines until an engineer signs off on it as a
On the
complete.
restorations.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I mean, you know, you violate the rules and do those things, you're gonna have to pay a price. And, you know, like you said, I mean, you gotta make it so it disincentivizes someone else from doing the same thing. Well, yeah, it's gonna be a $5,000 fine, and I'll do this, and I'll maybe have to fix a few things, and I can,
You know,
afford
it's
that.
easy
So,
to take the fine and throw it into your budget and do it wrong and then just pay the fine, because I know 20 years ago, there was a property owner that did it 4 years in a row, so.
If that was the intent behind it, this definitely sends a clear message to not even try that from now on.
So I would hope it would send a message.
And the other option is just to remove the fine entirely. They have the option to restore it back to natural. And at that point, you might want to consider removing the fine if they did that.
Oh, putting it all back to the
Yeah,
regular.
If they put it
to
all
to
back.
As
the
if they
original
never-
way before they did any of the work?
Yeah, that's
Oh,
the other, that's their option.
Guess
That's the
we'll see if
option.
anyone does that, we'll waive our $5,000 fine and fees then at that point.
Except for the engineering costs.
I might even forgive those.
So do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion. We do a flat $5,000 fine plus any engineering costs until project is completed and signed off.
Okay, is that for both
For
properties
both
then?
properties, yes.
Both properties? Okay,
Is that doing anything with the $100 per day, or is that kind of included in what you're
I would say
suggesting?
that's probably,
they're gonna have the
Done
engineering
at that
costs on
point.
top of it. That doesn't mean they can ignore what the, you know, if the, let's do this and not call the engineer because it's gonna cost us more money
Yep.
type thing. So he still has to sign off on it, so. I have a motion, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Diane. Call the question, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries, 5 in favor, none against. 7E, approve ambulance department annual Medicare adjustment.
So as Tim DeShane reported on the ambulance billing section, these are Medicaid and Medicaid write-offs and adjustments. As you know, if anybody gets a bill, Medicare always has a max that they will pay. So the request to approve is the mandatory adjustment of $234,587.18.
Questions? We go through it every year,
Yeah, I know we do.
so. Do I have a motion to approve annual Medicare adjustments?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Diane,
I'll second.
second by Shallen. Call the question, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries, 5 in favor, none against. 7F, approve preliminary SCDP grant/loan proposal.
So Kelly Kerfeld, doing business as S. William Property Management LLC, has applied to the EDA for a SCDP, which is a Small Cities Grant and Loan, for the purpose of replacing windows in the rental units in the upper level of 300 Main Street South. The EDA met with Kerfeld today at their regular meeting, and they do have a recommendation to proceed. The proposal is to remove and replace the 37 windows in the apartments. The contractor estimate is $44,400. If the project is finally approved, The owner would pay 30%, which is $13,320. The city would pay the other 70%. 40% would be a convertible loan. If he keeps it for 10 years, it goes from a loan to a grant. And the other 30% is a city deferred loan at 0%, sits on the property until some future date when it's sold and we collect that money back. What would happen next is the city has to send a letter into SHPO, which is the State Historic Preservation Office. They get to sign off on the project before we do anything to make sure it doesn't take away from the historic significance of Main Street because it is a historic district. So what we're looking for tonight is just preliminary approval of the project to proceed, meaning we'll send that letter off to SHPO, and if we get their approval, then it gives us the authority to take the next steps to get the final estimates in and to get the work done and to get the agreements done. So all I'm looking for tonight is preliminary approval of the project at about approximately that dollar amount. We'll know the exact numbers once we get closer.
So the percentages won't change the dollar?
Percentages don't change. This is part of the money from the federal grant that we received in 2006, that the money has been loaned out and it's rolled back to the city, and then we loan it back out again, and people sell and it rolls back to the city, and it's just perpetual.
Questions?
In that 10-year timeframe, that 40%, they're not paying anything on that?
No, they do not pay on that, but what happens is that dollar amount, I think it's in year 7 or 6, that's when it starts, 10% gets cut off, and then the next year 20% goes away, and the next year 30%. Once they have 10 years, the whole thing is converted to a grant.
But if they sell in that period, that gets paid back?
That comes back
Okay.
as well.
Got it. Okay.
Any other questions? Do I have a motion to preliminarily approve the project?
I'll make the motion.
I'll
Motion by
second.
Shalin,
I'll second.
second by Joe. Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5 in favor, none against. Unfinished business, City Hall front steps.
That's just ongoing. We'll be having getting ready to go out to bid for that. We'll probably have that maybe at the next couple of council meetings.
Okay.
Still a little early yet.
Okay? We have no new business. This now brings us to our consent agenda. We have schedule of claims, unpaid claims of $127,821.43 for a total of the same. It's attachment 10B is resolution number 2023-14, accepting contributions. You have the number for the men's card plane?
Oh, she said she gave it to you.
Well, she didn't give it to me.
I know it's 154 and some odd cents.
Okay. And then a $500 donation from Headway Marking, Danwelly Southtown, to be allocated to the ambulance department. And on behalf of the council and the city, I want to thank those people for their contributions. We have resolution number 2023-15, approving an off-site gambling permit for the Sauk Center Conservation Club. The permit will allow for a raffle to be held on June 10th, 2023 at the Sinclair Lewis Park Band Shell. Is there any questions about the consent agenda? Do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Heidi, second by Diane. Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5 in favor, none against. We have no informational items, so that brings us to the end of our agenda. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion by Joe, second by Diane. Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5 in favor, none against. Meeting adjourned.